So this is the second video on some Excel basics. You see I've got a little spreadsheet that I've created, nothing really fancy. I've just got an hourly rate, which is dollars. I've got hours worked from some staff and a little heading. So what I want to do is just finish off this spreadsheet really simply. I want to be able to do some totals, do some formulas and some calculations. So it's really easy to enter in calculations and formulas in Excel. Excel actually comes with a whole range of formulas built in, which you can see from the Formulas tab. If you're into accounting and things like that, you'll notice some of them under the financial ones, heaps there. Under logical means that you can have conditional things, so you could do an if statement and have a different formula depending on the result of something that you've compared. You've got date and time, you've got lookup and reference, etc. There's a whole pile of them. We're not going to look at most of them, we're just going to look at some of the basic ones. So, for example, before I start, I'm just going to do a little bit of formatting on this. Just want to make the size of the columns a little bit bigger so that we can see the headings properly. So hours worked, hourly rate, total wages, and I will put that in with dollars on it. So if I just go up to home, just click the dollar sign so that we know that we're talking about money. And that's probably all we need to do at this point in time. So if you are putting in an inbuilt function is as simple as putting your cursor in a spot, and the most common inbuilt function is the sum function. So for example, if I wanted to add up those hours worked, just to find out the total of number of hours worked by my casual staff, for example, I can just click on the sum function. What you'll see is the little marching ants around the numbers that I'm including, and it's slightly highlighted. And then underneath here you'll see equals sum B4 to B13. So what that is that's referring to a range of cells. So it's referring to more than one cell. And when you're referring to a range of cells, it's done by the two diagonal corners. In this case, it's only one column. So it's B4, which is the one diagonal corner, and the opposite corner is down the bottom here at B13. So you'll see B4 colon B13. You can also do it individually by going B5, comma, B6, B4, comma, B5, comma, B6, comma, B7, comma, and that will also add them up using the sum. Obviously, it's much easier to do it as a range, and when you go sum at the bottom of a row of numbers, Excel actually assumes that you want to add up those numbers. So, yeah, most of the time, 90% of the time, that's probably what you do want to do. So if I'm happy with that, I just press enter. The beauty about formulas is that they automatically recalculate. So if I change any of the cells that make up that formula will change. So for example, if I've made a mistake and Henry's actually not worked 7, it should have been 17. You see it's currently 188. If I put in 17 there, press enter, it's now 198. So as well as the inbuilt functions such as sum, there's also things like average and a couple of other sort of basic ones here under the auto sum option, the more sort of statistical. But you can also create your own formulas. So for example, if I wanted to multiply to get the total wages, the hours worked times by the hourly rate, I can just put that in as a formula. To put in a formula, always start with the equals, and then I like to use the pointing method, but I could just as easily type in B4, and to do the times you use the asterisk, B4 times C4, and you can see those two numbers highlighted, and if I just press enter, it's telling me that's 390. So you can do it like that. Or I like them, I'm just going to press delete there. I like the pointing method. So again, I put equals, and then I can just point to the bit. So it equals that times that. And that's what I want. I just press enter, and again, it's done the maths for me. One of the really nice things about Excel is that it works in what I would call absolute and relative addressing. And by default, everything is relative. So this is actually not really B4 times by C4. What it is, it's based on position. So it's actually from this position here, it's 1, 2, which happens to be B4, times by 1, which happens to be C4. So what I can do, because it is relative, if I was to copy that formula from there, and I'm just going to, again, the same way as we did with the runs, just drag it down 1. And if you have a look at the second formula, now it's B5 times C5. So I can just pretty much just do that to there, and it will automatically, because it's relative, it will automatically change the information based on the new position of the formula. So it makes it super easy to do runs. And at the end, if I wanted to find out what my total wages were for the week, all I need to do is put my cursor at the bottom where I want the answer to be, go up to the auto sum thing and choose sum, or you can just click on auto sum because it's automatically on sum. You can see the marching ants around the information that you want, and just press enter. And the total wages is 5148. Now, most of the time, this is what you want it to do. You want it to be relative. You want the formula to change. If you had a whole lot of columns up there and you wanted to do the sum, you could do the sum on 1, and I can just show you if I just copy the sum, it will be zeros obviously, but if I copy that across, it's a formula. The first one is D4 to D13, and obviously because it's relative, I've moved it up 1 column. It's going to be E4 to E13, F4 to F13, G4 to G13, and if I was to copy it somewhere totally different, so I'm just going to use the copy, so Control C to copy that, and I'm going to paste it over here, Control V, and again you can see now it's picked up it being sum of N17 to N26, so it's picked up the 10 cells above where my response is, or where my answer is. That's because it works in relative mode. Of course, I don't want that one, and I don't want those, so I'll just quickly delete them. So an example of where you might want it to be relative, let's say that, we've assumed that they're all on the same hourly rate, so I'm actually just going to delete that. I can delete the whole column, but I'll just delete the formula for the moment. And I can put something like hourly rate, and then next to that, type in 26. And just to be fancy, I'll even format it back as a dollar. So what I can do is I can use just the one cell down the bottom there. So again, the formula is the same, equals that and times the hourly rate, but in this case the hourly rate is here. If I leave that just as it is, and I'll do it for the first one, obviously the first one's correct because it's B4 times C17. If I copy that down, I'm going to say what you think will happen, but obviously it isn't going to work because now it's B5 times C18, which is the one underneath that. In this case, the next one, it's B6, which is fine, but it's times C19, and C19 is empty. It's that relative. It's changed based on the position of the formula. So I'm going to redo that one again. So this time I'm going to make it absolute. So I'm going to go equals, to put the formula in, equals that, asterisk, and then down to the hourly rate that I want to change. To make it absolute on a Windows machine, you can press the F4, and what it does, it puts a dollar sign around it. So it's $C, $17. You can actually type those in. It doesn't really matter, but on a Windows machine, the function for the F4 key will do that for you. So in a laptop, you do have to be careful with those function keys because sometimes they have multiple things and you might need to use a different keystroke to get that. If that's the case, then again, you can just put the dollars in Or you can play around with your laptop buttons to see, depending on which laptop I'm using, I might need to include the blue function button. So it really depends on your keyboard layout. But I'm happy with that, C17. And now I'm going to grab that formula and copy it down. And you can see now that the constant is C17, but again, the rest of it is still relative. Now the beauty of this is, let's say for example we had an update of the hourly rate. If it was how it was before, you'd either have to type it in or overwrite all of the other dates. But here there's only one spot that I need to change it. So the rate's now gone up to 27.5, and have a look at those total wages automatically update. So that's how you deal with absolute and relative addressing, and that's just the basic form. There's obviously a lot more to it than that, but that is the basics of how to do it and the basics of putting in a formula.